So I'll share my screen with you. And you should see that now coming up. Okay. So welcome to Home Energy Scotland's webinar. In the next 30 minutes or so, what we'll be looking at is basically how Home Energy Scotland can help you save money on your energy bills and help keep your home warmer. And I know that everyone is particularly interested in the energy efficiency for older buildings. We'll touch on that, and I'll go over the format of what we're going to talk about tonight. But firstly, let me introduce myself and my colleague that's joining me today. My name's Scott, and accompanying me tonight is my colleague Paul. And I'm an outreach specialist with Home Energy Scotland, and Paul specialises in renewable technologies. With outreach, for example, I typically engage with organisations, community groups, individuals on the full range of help, support and assistance that's available through Home Energy Scotland. Paul deals with any basically queries and gives advice on if someone is interested in installing renewable technologies or is interested in renewable technologies. Paul can answer any questions that you might have with that. We've already put everyone on mute, which is great. We do tend to have a feedback forum now because we are a Scottish Government programme. Paul and myself basically like to justify to them that we are in fact speaking to you people tonight, and we're not just turning our computers on and watching the TV. Plus as well, it gives us an indication of you know, how you thought or what your thoughts are on the topic that was discussed tonight, and gives us an idea if there's any improvements that we can make for going forward. As an interactive session, with regards to tonight, we'll have a Q&A section at the end. But you can, if you want, you know, use the raise hand function or put any questions in the chat, and we can get to that at points throughout tonight. So what we're going to be looking at is what we're going to be looking at tonight is Home Energy Scotland, who we are and what we do. We're going to be looking at the typical areas of heat loss. You can't actually discuss energy efficiency if you don't know what areas of the property are losing you the most heat. And we're going to offer you quick tips on how you can lower your fuel bills and stay warm at home for less. Now, over the last year, many of us had been spending more time at home. And obviously, whilst your top priority would have been keeping yourself, your family safe, there might have been this worry about the effects that this would be having on your energy bills, and also how to keep your home warmer. Just a note is that there are a lot that you can do to save energy and money when you're spending more time at home, and we have some hints and tips on how you can do that. Also as well, we'll see if we can get further help and signposting after the Q&A as well. We can maybe provide any links that could be of use. So, regards to Home Energy Scotland, Home Energy Scotland is a Scottish government-funded service that is managed by the Energy Savings Trust. It was set up and formed probably about 12, 13 years ago as part of the home energy efficiency programmes for Scotland, and it had three main aims. The first aim was to help reduce the CO2 emissions that the domestic sector generates in Scotland. Second, it was to help improve the energy efficiencies of properties in Scotland. And thirdly, it was to assist in alleviating fuel poverty, which is a significant problem in Scotland. Now, we do this by providing free and impartial advice to householders, as well as gaining access to certain types of Scottish Government funding. For example, certain types of funding can be used to improve the energy efficiency measures in a property. And also, if someone was interested in moving away from petrol and diesel vehicles to electric, there's potentially ways of funding that as well. That's just a couple of examples. I mean, there are other ways in which we can help, but as I said, that's just a couple of examples. During the current election period, there are certain specifics to certain types of funding that we can provide. However, that if you make contact with us, any of the telephone advisors would be happy to help with that. So if you were looking to get in touch with us, you can do so between 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening, Monday to Friday, and also from 9 until 5 on a Saturday. We do operate a network of local advice centres throughout Scotland. So we have one in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Ayr and Inverness. And if you were to make contact with us, you would be provided with that free and impartial energy advice that's tailored to your needs. In addition to the telephone advisors who are fully trained, we do have dedicated specialists who operate within the centres as well. So we have specialists who deal with renewable technologies. So if you've got any questions, any queries with regards to installing renewable technologies, we have specialists who can deal with that. Transport. So if you were interested in going down a more sustainable transport route, be it electric vehicles or electric bikes, we have advisors and specialists who deal with that. Water specialists. We deal extensively with Scottish Water. Simply because there are certain areas in Scotland who are classed as high priority water areas. And what that means is that if an area was one of these areas, or if there was a particularly dry spell, certain parts can be obviously subject to water shortages. So we have water specialists. And in addition to that as well, Scottish Water are the highest users of energy in the country. And you might think that it rains here all the time. There's probably never a day that goes by where rain doesn't fall. However, they can only really get access to less than 1% of that rainfall. And it takes a huge amount of energy and effort to get it into the property. And bearing in mind that every drop that's coming into the house is drink quality. And then obviously taking the water away and preparing it for returning into the environment. We also have a section as well that nurtures partnerships with other organisations as well. So, you know, if, for example, there's any community groups or any groups like the community groups, for example, our partnership team have it's a portal system. So for any referrals that you might see or identify that our services could be of use, or there might be some form of help that can be offered by ourselves, that community group can make that referral directly, and our advisors would take that up straight away as soon as it comes into the centre. Sorry, does anyone have any questions with regards to that so far? No? Okay. So obviously we're here tonight to look at you know, the energy efficiency of older buildings, the energy efficiency of properties in general. And before we actually look at typical heat loss figures and how we can combat that heat loss, it's just really to bring to your attention that there are a number of factors that determine how expensive, for example, our fuel bills are going to be. The first point would be how much you're actually paying for any gas, any electricity that's coming into the property. The question here would be, do you ever switch suppliers? And if you don't, is there a barrier to switching for you? There are organisations out there that can help with that. We are free and impartial, as I mentioned, so we don't sell anything, and we don't represent any energy companies, and we don't do any switching. However, if you were looking to find out more about that, our advisors can help signpost you in that right direction. Obviously not as well as how much or how you're actually using your energy. Are you efficient with its use, and are you only using it for what you need to? And third, it would be is how energy efficient is your property. Obviously, everyone's here tonight because you've got an interest in it. Does your property retain heat for as long as possible? If not, obviously, it looks as though there could be some form of inefficient energy efficiency measures that have been installed previously. So the next, what I've got here, and this is just typical heat loss figures, and this is just standard heat loss. And we've got, you'll see in the left-hand side of the screen there, percentages. And what I would like to ask you actually, you can unmute yourself with us if you like. We have various elevations of a property. So we've got the roof, the walls, we've got the floor, and we've got components like the windows, doors. And what I would like to ask you is, in your opinion, what percentage applies to, for example, the roof? Or what's the biggest heat loss area, do you reckon?
Roof.
The roof, right?
Windows.
Right, okay. Anyone else got any?
It depends on the building, whether you've got double glazing or not. So a lot of it will go through the windows, and also depending on the wall fabric, through the walls.
Yeah.
I guess it depends whether you're in a flat and things as well.
Yeah. Well, you'd be correct. Yeah. The biggest area of heat loss typically is through the walls. You would expect it to be the roof, but in a lot of properties, the surface area is greater on the walls than it is on the roof. So about 33% or a third of heat is lost through the walls. Now, I think as everyone here, I take it it's all solid wall properties within the area, or quite a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm a mixture of solid and timber frame. So.
Right. Okay.
And I'm mainly window.
Yeah. So yeah.
3 feet of stone.
3 feet of stone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On average.
We live in a house. I've got lath and plaster as well. Somebody's saying in the chat.
Yeah.
3 feet of stone.
3, yeah. So there's
No, it's just jobs for.
So that's I say traditional build. So there's solid stone, solid brick, and obviously you've got cavity walls as well. If there are cavities in the property, is it suitable for insulation? And I'll just go over some figures in a wee second as well about that. Second area of heat loss would be the roof. About 26% on average is lost through the roof. Question here they've got is, do you have a loft space, or is it a room and roof you've got? And is it insulated? Obviously, it's not rocket science. 18% is lost through your windows. Someone mentioned there about whether or not you double glazing or not. There are other options to double glazing. Are just as effective and can be more cost effective. Drafts account for about 12%. If you've got drafty windows, are they sealed properly? And we'll go over a wee bit about that as well. Floors accounts for about 8% of heat that's lost through the property. And floors are one area that I think get neglected quite a lot, simply because although it's only 8% that's lost through the floors, etc. And it could actually make the overall feel of the room a lot warmer as well underfoot. And doors account for typically about 3%. Now that's an average, that's about average for the average type of property. However, obviously stone built properties, the heat loss through that can be significantly higher. So what I'll do is I'll just go over a little table and we'll go through the measures that can be used on each of those areas. So these are the largest areas of heat loss, your walls and your roof. And you can see there that there's a little statement there that only 9% of the 8.5 million homes with solid walls have solid wall insulation. Now, I think some of the properties that could be listed or have some form of, I don't know, is there any listed properties at all? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to, you obviously, with regards to external solid wall insulation, that would not be an option. I don't know if there would be any stipulation against internal wall insulation at all. However, you know, external or internal wall solid wall insulation can save someone around £255 a year on their annual energy cost. And obviously there is some carbon that can be saved as well. Cavity wall insulation, if there is a cavity in the property, you know, that could save you typically about £165 a year. And then you can see there that there are 14.1 million homes with cavity insulation. And there's 5.3 million homes without it. In these measures, there are always some form of help and assistance through ourselves. As I explained earlier, because we're in that election period, I can't talk specifically about any specific types of funding. However, if you gave one of the advisors a phone and asked about the help, they would let you know about it. There's a couple of ways they can do this, either through the Warmer Homes Scotland scheme, which is the Scottish Government's grant. There's eligibility to that. However, never discount yourself from it. And if there was no obviously route through the Warmer Homes Scotland scheme, they do have an interest-free loan, the Scottish Government. The specifics of that loan, you know, you can give one of the advisors a phone and they can go through that with you. And what I can say is that there were changes in it, and they've maintained those changes into the new financial year. So if you are interested in any of these insulation measures, please get in touch. With regards to loft insulation, the recommended thickness for loft insulation is 270 millimetres. So that's 11 inches. Now, I'm not sure if anyone in here has that recommended thickness in a loft. You do? Brilliant. Yeah. I don't know, does anyone have any underfloor insulation, incidentally?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Right, you've looked at that. Do you find that made a difference to your property?
Yeah.
You did, right? Okay.
Well, we live in a new build house that's 4 years old, and it was built with the current building regs with a very high degree of insulation in the floors, in the solid concrete floor. So, and it does make the house feel very warm, but then it's so well insulated and everything else is up to current standards that there are no drafts and there is there's a bit of heat loss through double glazed windows, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, obviously there is if you've got an energy performance certificate, or if you've purchased your home within the last 10 years, you should have received an energy performance certificate. And basically that just gives you an indication of how energy efficient the property is. The ratings themselves, if you're interested and you don't know what your energy efficiency rating is for your property, you can go into the Scottish Epc Register. And if you go into the Scottish Epc Register, you search by postcode, you enter your own postcode, and then you locate your property, and you can download a copy actually. So it's publicly available information if you were looking to get a copy of that. On the EPC, it would make recommendations on what you can do to actually make your property more energy efficient. It makes recommendations on that, and also gives you an indication of the energy efficiency measures that were installed at the time of the survey. So there's a huge amount of information on the EPC, or the Energy Performance Certificate, and it's free to download. So it might be worth your while actually going on there and finding out if there is an EPC exists for your home. Incidentally, with regards to loft insulation, if there is no loft insulation in a property, if by installing the 270mm, you could save up to £150 a year on your annual energy costs as well. And then you'll see there as well about the existing room and roof insulation, or existing room and roof. If you insulate that, it could save you about £190. So there is some significant savings there.
Just an observation. Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Can you hear me? My house is about 15 years old, and I had solar panels put in 2013, and they had to have a surveyor around to do this energy efficiency thing, which gave him a rating of C and made a few observations and things. But then we still have people coming around the estate saying they should put cavity wall insulation in. As far as I'm concerned, we've already got it. And I worry about these people putting in too much, so you'd get damp coming through.
Yeah. If your EPC states that you've already got cavity wall insulation, then if there are people coming around your houses, they're just typical you're trying any sales tactics on you, really.
Yeah.
So if you can actually obtain a copy of your own EPC, you don't need to answer it to anyone, but you can just reassure yourself that you've got that already.
Well, when I had a window replaced, you could see the insulation in the cavity walls anyway.
Yeah. And again, with regards to cavity wall insulation, you should have a guarantee with it. There's the Cavity Insulation Guarantee Association, CIGA, and I'll see if I can obtain. And I'm not sure if Paul, can you get a note of their number at all and pop it in the chat maybe?
Aye, no worries. If you give us 2 wee seconds, I'll
brilliant.
go and get their webpage and stuff just now. If you bear with me a wee second.
It's the Cavity Insulation Guarantee Association, and basically if you're not sure if your house has been insulated, your cavity has been insulated, and you don't have an EPC, if you give them a call, you can actually ask and see if there is a guarantee that exists for that.
Just while we're on wall insulation, there's a question in the chat about internal insulation of lath and plaster walls, and does it cause a mess, and how does the insulation work for that for solid walls?
Right.
That are covered in lath and plaster, yeah.
Yeah, internal insulation with regards to the lath and plaster walls, whether or not they would install that insulation on the inside of that or not, you need to seek specialist help with that or advice with an installation company. The National Insulation Association's website, again, if you were looking for accredited installers, if you go into the NIA, National Insulation Association's website, and you are looking for internal wall insulation installers, you can search for them in there, and they actually do it in an incremental distance from your own postcode. So I know from personal experience, I'd say I am an insulator to trade, but I also did some fit out works in some properties which were lath and plaster, and we actually had to strip it back, but that was all done via architect's plans, right enough. So that had to be stripped back, and it did cause a mess. I don't know if it's possible for that to remain in place and put the insulation, a new insulation on the inside of it. You'd need to take actual specific advice from an installer with regards to that. The thing with regards to internal wall insulation is that, it could mean having to get sockets moved Obviously, skirtings would have to be moved, and it could slightly alter the dimensions, or it will slightly alter the dimensions of the actual rooms themselves. So, but it can be an effective method of retaining heat within an older style property, if that is allowable, right enough, is to install internal wall insulation. Again, with regards to any potential ways that assistance with that financially, you'd need to make contact with our contact centre and speak to one of the advisors and see if there's any help and funding available with regards to that. I saw some chat in there. Yeah, Paul's actually put in the Cavity Insulation Guarantee Agency's website detail in there, and also their telephone number and their email. I don't know, Paul, on your travels with regards to your renewable technologies, have you ever had anyone speak about lath and plaster on the walls having to be removed at all?
It is something that has come up. A lot of properties, older style properties, have got that type of build, and just like you said, it's something that we always advise to get specialist advice on in regards to, excuse me, the method of how it's put in. And on top of that as well, obviously the older style properties have got like old style coving, and there's old sort of decorative parts, and obviously sometimes, depending on where it's situated, it might not be possible to put it back, or it's damaged and things like that as well. But again, that's always something that we would advise to speak with a specialist insulation installer in relation to, because it's no like there's one fix that fixes all properties. All properties are different. They're all constructed slightly different, and there's different ways of doing things as well. So we always advise in those particular circumstances to always seek advice from a specialist before any work is carried out, and also checking with the local authority as well, just to keep yourself right, also in terms of any work that's been done. But yeah, we would always advise to speak with a specialist insulation company before going ahead and just going with that, because as I say, it can be done slightly different depending on the property and the circumstances as well.
Incidentally, as I mentioned right at the start, I think before most folk came into the room, we do offer virtual visits, as it's called, if someone was interested in a renewable technology. I mentioned our renewable specialists. They can, pre-pandemic times, where they used to visit someone in their home and produce a report for them, and on that report it would list the type of insulation that was in the property, and basically any recommendations would be made in the report to improve it, simply because if you are looking at a renewable technology, for example, they work well, or they work best within a well insulated, energy efficient property. So it's in the owner's best interest to up the insulation measures or the energy efficiency measures in the property prior to getting any renewable technology installed, and I'm sure Paul would agree. But yeah, there was a question in the chat there, can you insulate from the outside through thick sandstone walls? I don't know what you mean with that. I think from the outside, they install cavity wall insulation in that kind of method, where they actually drill the hole through the mortar, and then they actually fill the cavity up with the insulation from the outside. I'm not sure if that was the point of that. Only if there was a cavity would they be able to do that, insulate that wall.
Yeah, I think that was a follow-up question about the lath and plaster or the lath.
Ah, right, okay.
Whether you could get it from the other side, but that would be
I get, yeah.
drill, I think, yeah.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I mean, older style properties, you know, they can have significantly more of a heat loss through due to the construction of the walls. And obviously the aim is to try and stop the rate at which heat is passing through the wall. And it all comes down to insulation. Obviously, it's not rocket science. Incidentally, one point we didn't highlight as well is the floor insulation. On a typical property, savings by installing floor insulation can be anything from between £45 to £65. Now that might not sound a great deal. However, the more insulation you're putting in there, or these areas that you're dealing with, the savings themselves can add up to a significant amount of money. And obviously that's the aim, is to create warmer, more energy efficient properties where we're not having to use as much gas or electricity to heat our homes. That's the whole point of this. So and there is help available with installing some of these measures, or most of these measures, and it's just a matter of getting in touch with us to do so. The Scottish Epc Register, I think, I'm not sure if you could maybe pop that into the chat as well, Paul, for me, please. The website for the Scottish Epc Register is managed by the Energy Savings Trust, the register itself, and you will know this an energy performance certificate because, as I said, if you have purchased a property in the last, say, 10 years, you should have received one as part of the pack. Or if you're selling one, you would get one completed as well. So it contains a whole load of information on it, and if you have an older style property, it might contain advice with regards to the insulation of the walls if that survey was done on site. Hopefully that's been helpful with that. Yep. Someone's saying there about are we supposed to open windows for ventilation re-COVID-19? It's not something we give advice on with regards to that. However, I think you just really follow local medical or local guidelines, or national guidelines actually, with regards to COVID. But yeah, I think ventilation is one of what they say is open your windows. With regards to quick wins and saving energy, or quick tips on how to save energy in the home, I'll just run through our top 10 items here. And you know, these things might sound like common sense. However, you would be amazed at the amount of times we speak to folk and say that they can't seem to reduce their energy costs. You know, but simple, you know, it's a common sense approach. It can go a long way to help saving you money on your energy costs. Things like turning off your appliances rather than leaving them on standby. And using a bowl to wash up rather than running in hot water. Typically, turning your appliances off standby can save you about £35 a year on your annual energy costs, and also reduce carbon emissions by about 55 kilograms. Up to now, we've just been talking about the monetary savings, and we tend to find is that, you know, if we can get someone to, you know, give them help and tips on how to save on the monetary side, then the carbon reduction would be natural and you wouldn't even be thinking about it. So this is the approach, obviously, that we use. And turning your appliances off rather than leaving them on standby save you about £35 a year. Using a bowl to wash up rather than running hot water, it's about a £25 a year saving typically on that. And again, these savings themselves might not seem great on their own, but we can show that, you know, when we get these, can add up to a substantial amount of money. Spending 1 minute less in the shower. something as simple as you're spending 1 minute less in the shower would save the average person about £4 over the year. Now that might not sound a lot. However, if there was someone in the family who was maybe taking a 10 or 15 minute shower, and I'm talking about teenagers who maybe have a tendency to switch a shower on and then go and play with their iPad and then go back into the shower after it been running for so long, the saving there can be quite significant. From a family of 4, there's a £16 saving for every minute spent less in the shower. That's an annual saving. However, if you've got someone that's spending longer in the shower, you can just do the math and work out potential savings yourself there. How much? There was someone I spoke to actually last week, and it was an actual inquiry that came into one of my colleagues, and this lady couldn't work out why her energy bill was so high, and it turned out that every second day or every day it might have been, our grandson would come in from school, drop in from school and take a shower, and he was taking a 40-minute shower. And then obviously once we highlighted the potential saving or what that was costing, our energy costs dropped dramatically, and that's simply because you're using, if you've got an electricity, a shower that's fed through electricity. Electricity is more expensive than gas. It's maybe 3 or 4 times more expensive than gas. So, and if you have a shower that is fed from a wet system, a wet system, fitting a shower head, an efficient shower head, can save you as much as £75 a year on your energy costs, simply because they aerate the water, so there's less water being used. These shower heads don't work so well with electric showers, or they don't work with electric showers. They can actually harm them. But if you've got a shower that is fed from a wet heating system, fitting an efficient shower head can actually save you some money there as well. Line drying clothes instead of using a tumble dryer. Now we're not asking you to go out in the middle of winter in Scotland and stick your clothes out in a line. This is just on an average over the year through the spring summer months, and there's about a £35 saving there on average not using a tumble dryer. If you have a room thermostat, and I don't know if anyone's got a room thermostat in the property, it might be in your hallway somewhere. If you turn that down by 1 degree from 22 to 21 degrees, there's typically about a £60 to £70 saving on your annual energy bills. The recommended recommended room temperature is anything from between 18 to 21 degrees. Now I don't know if anyone actually sets it higher than that. If you do have a thermostat, does everyone have a room thermostat, or is there anyone you do? Yeah. Can I ask what kind of temperature do you set it to?
About 20.
20, right? Okay, that's good.
I'm 22 and a half.
22 and a half, right?
At night.
At night, right?
15 at night.
18.
18, right? Yeah. I completely, obviously, during the winter months, if you've got it 22, by turning it down to 21, you might not actually even notice the difference. What I would say is, 21 degrees, if it was 21 degrees outside, you would probably find there would be people in the park at lunchtime eating their sandwiches. 21 degrees in your home. If you're feeling it cold, then obviously these issues that we spoke about there, drafts and inadequate insulation measures, might be responsible for that, so that heat's escaping quicker than it should. Only filling your kettle up with as much water as you need, about £6 saving there. Not sound a great deal. Now obviously not that I'm a geek or anything like that, and I wasn't bored when I say this. I was doing it for scientific purposes. I actually timed my own kettle, how long it took my own kettle to boil from full, and I was about 4.5 minutes, and only putting enough water in for what I was actually going to use for, say, one cup. It was at about 1.5 minutes. So there's a 3-minute gap there from my full kettle to what I would only need. And you can see that if you drank a lot of tea, a lot of coffee over the week and over the year, that can add up to quite a significant amount. So that £6 can be quite a conservative figure, I think. Draft proofing windows and doors. Someone mentioned windows earlier there. Draft proofing windows and doors can typically save you about £25 a year on your annual energy costs. If you have single glaze windows, and rather than installing double glazing, have you considered secondary glazing? Because secondary glazing can be just as effective as double glazing and can be significantly less expensive to install. So if there are any stipulations with regards to the windows in your property, secondary glazing could be an option for you to try and retain as much heat through that part. Also as well, we would speak about using drapes, curtains at dusk, at night time, shutting them over.
Shutters.
Sorry?
Shutters.
Shutters, yeah.
But a lot of houses in bigger have got wooden shutters, so yeah.
Right, okay. So yeah, and I'm not too sure about the shutters. Obviously, how much that effect that would have on it, but
Historic Environment Scotland did a survey or did a report on it a few years back, and they seem to perform quite well.
Right. Okay. If you can get Moses to come along and do a talk, Moses would go in a lot greater depth with regards to that. Obviously because he deals with that through Historic Scotland.
We had shutters in our previous house, and when we draft proofed our windows with a quite well-known company, which we were very pleased with, they also draft proofed our shutter boxes, and it made a significant difference to the way we heated our Victorian house.
Right, okay.
Noticeable.
Generally speaking, draft excluders, depending on how your windows are, you can get these draft excluder strips that you can install on your own, relatively inexpensive. Or alternatively, if you, like you said, you've got a company in to do that, and they would do a more professional, more thorough job with that. Yep. Obviously, a cost to that. Again, if you were looking for any guidance or signposting with regards to that, our advisors might be able to do that for you if anyone was interested in that type of measure. Let's see what's in the chat here. Paul actually put in the Scottish Epc Register website, and someone's actually put a comment or a question up there with regards to renewable technologies. We'll do that at the end, and then with a Q&A session, and if there are any questions, we can answer that when we get to that, if that's okay. Choosing a laptop over a desktop, there's about an average saving there of about £19 a year. Installing reflective radiator panels on external walls, and replacing inefficient light bulbs with LEDs. Replacing the light bulbs on average, there's about £39 saving there over the year, just by replacing a halogen bulb with an LED. And LEDs are pretty not really that expensive to buy. Typical savings, if you replace a halogen bulb with an LED, the saving over the lifetime of that bulb is anything from between £70 to £90 just by replacing the bulb. And these bulbs tend to have long life guarantees on them, of about 15 years. Installing the reflective radiator panels, there's about a £15 saving there a year on your annual energy costs. And you can fashion your own. You can buy these reflective panels from any reputable DIY shop. However, you can fashion your own and see you'll see some saving on that as well. There is, with regards to, it was mentioned about the savings on your energy costs. And I don't know if this would apply to anyone here tonight. It might. Some of your family might be able to apply for this, and it's called the Warm Homes Discount. Now, if an energy company's got more than 250,000 customers, they offer what's called a Warm Homes Discount, and they tend to open their schemes August, September time each year. So, and the thing to know about the Warm Homes Discount is that it's done on a first come, first served basis. And if you are eligible for that, you could potentially get £140 credit on your electricity costs. You just make contact with your supplier nearer the time to find out if their scheme is opened for applications, and see if you could get some benefit to that. I mentioned the Warmer Home Scotland scheme earlier as well. The Warmer Home Scotland scheme is the Scottish Government's grant. There is eligibility to it. However, never ever discount yourself. It's amazing how many people we've spoken to who automatically say, "Oh, I wouldn't qualify for that," who actually do. If there's any eligibility for Warmer Home Scotland, you could potentially get upgrades to your heating system, insulation measures, draft proofing measures. In some instances, they could install renewable technologies. I think last year we helped, I think it was 5,500 households with regards to the Warmer Home Scotland scheme. Each year, Home Energy Scotland helps 90,000 households. So if you were to give us a call or give one of the contact centre advisors a call, they can see if there's any eligibility for Warmer Home Scotland. Yep. So I was going to say, is there any questions at all? And this is where I can open it up to answer any questions on renewable technologies as well. So if you've got anything at all, just you can unmute yourself and just ask away.
Just to say, I've got a relative who's just had a ground source heat pump put in, and they seem to have got some sort of grant that's spread over a few years. It took them a year to get it in because of COVID, but now it's working and it's really good.
Yep. I don't know if you want to mention, say anything, Paul.
It could well possibly be the renewable heat incentive. That is it a friend, family member? You said
son-in-law.
Yeah, it could well be the renewable heat incentive, which was an incentive that was set up to help with the uptake of the system, and it meant that when people were putting that in, or any renewable heating technology for that matter, that there was an incentive there to help with the install of it, and it meant that the people that were installing that, and still just now that are installing it, they can get a bit of money back for the heat that system.
Yeah, it's spread over a few years, I think.
Yeah.
Talking about grants.
Yeah, I got a log boiler through that scheme, and currently I haven't bought any fuel for about 3 years because I'm harvesting trees that I planted 30 years ago, and it makes you feel very smug, but it's bloody.
Yeah. Was that the scheme that you're talking about there, Paul?
The renewable heat incentive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, aye. But the Warm Home Scotland scheme, as I said, we administer it. We administer that on behalf of the Scottish Government. There is eligibility criteria to it. However, as I said, don't ever discount yourself and think that you wouldn't. If you don't ask, you won't get, and if you don't inquire, how will you know? There is help out there to help you install energy efficiency improvements in the property, and this is the first step that our advisor would look at to see if there's any eligibility for the grant itself. On average, the grant installs, I think it's at £5,000 worth of measures. Paul, I think it's the Warm Home Scotland scheme.
I'm not too sure. I've not been working with the Warm Home Scotland scheme, so
yeah, I think on average about 5,000. That's the average install. It's about £5,000 worth of measures that are put into a property. So that could be like a new heating system, upgrading loft insulation, but you won't know until the survey was carried out if you were put forward for the survey. If there's no eligibility to Warm Home Scotland, as I mentioned, there is that it's a Home Energy Scotland interest-free loan, and there's certain elements to it. There's cashback elements to it. So there's energy efficiency measures, and on certain energy efficiency measures, there's a certain amount of cashback you can get on that. I'm not really giving that much away, am I, Paul?
Oh.
And also with renewable technologies, but they need to be certain heat generating renewable technologies. There could be some cashback element to that as well. But if you're looking to find out more, you can go onto the Home Energy Scotland's website, and you'll find the details on that. Actually, if you go onto the Home Energy Scotland's website, you should find it as the funding finder, it's called, and it'll give you all the details you need to know about that.
Yeah, there's a few more questions in the chat. I think there'd been one earlier on about air source heat pumps. And then we've got somebody mentioned that they got LED light bulbs but had to replace them earlier than expected. And I don't know whether there's any situations where maybe they're not so good. And then we've got a question about solar panels, potential planning issues, costs, and can you get grants for them, and also grants for secondary glazing. But that's quite a few things there.
The LEDs first. LED bulbs generally have longer life guarantees on them, 15 years. If you're finding that there's certain ones that are blown quite a lot, it could be the actual ring main itself. I don't know if there might be a surge in the ring main itself. But it's like everything else, everything that's produced, you do get ones that are that might be dodgy, if I put it politely. Yep, so it might not, if it's the same bulbs that are blowing constantly, then it might not be the bulb, it might be something to do with the supply going to it that's making it blow.
Because I'd also heard if you keep flicking them on, if they're in a position where you keep flicking them on and off, they're more likely to blow than if they're kind of on constantly. I don't know whether that's right.
Well, I moved into my flat over 3 years ago, and it was the first thing I did when I came in here is that I changed all my light fittings to LEDs, and I actually picked the bulbs up in the pound shop, and I have never had to change a bulb yet, and my lights are on and off all the time. Although I do watch how I'm using it, i.e. I don't leave lights on in a room if I'm not in there. Simple things like that. So I've not had to change any myself. But generally they do have the longer life guarantees on them, 15, 20 years in some respects. And if they are blowing and you're getting them from the shop, there's nothing to stop you taking them back because of it.
My son-in-law, electrical engineer, explained to me that sometimes the LEDs don't last as long as they should because of a technical thing like ring mains or whatever it is that just reduce the life of them.
Yeah, so I say it could be the electrical circuit that it's on.
Yeah,
something to do with that. So the secondary glazing one, there is I mentioned that at Home Energy Scotland loan, that can be used to install secondary glazing. But as I said, for the specifics of that, you'd be better actually given the 0808 number on that we showed earlier on there, and speak to one of the advisors. If you want to speak to your local office, your local office would be Glasgow, and you can actually select Glasgow on the telephone system. So, but if you phone 0808 808 2282, you could in theory be speaking to anyone throughout Scotland in any one of the other centres, and you get the same advice, right enough. You're getting the same advice. But if you specifically want to speak to your local area office, you can select Glasgow or Strathclyde and Central, and you'll get through to Glasgow office. So there is potentially ways that we can help with the secondary glazing. The solar panel one, what was the?
I was actually, sorry for nipping in, I was actually in the process to answer that while the sort of chat and stuff was happening. So you went too quick before I got to finish it. But I mean, in terms of that itself, we would be able to advise on the availability of grants and loans and things like Scott's mentioned earlier, to help with the install of the solar PV as well as any other renewable technologies. Again, like we mentioned earlier, because of the elections and stuff that's happening just now, we're not able to speak about that when we're sort of doing things like this. But certainly, we can either arrange to give you a wee ring, or if you wanted to give us a wee ring, that's something that we could go into a bit more detail with in regards to funding, to be able to give you that information fully. In terms of the other part of that, planning issues, the only things, in terms of planning, the only things I've came across myself when I've been speaking to people that have been putting these in or considering them, is if the property is A, listed, and B, if it's in an area of natural beauty.
Or conservation areas as well.
Conservation area as well, yep. Thanks. So those areas themselves tend to be the ones that kind of throw up the problems, if you like, in terms of planning. Costs, they can vary, because you've got the panels, you've also got tiles now as well, which in terms of that itself, you've got the older style tiles, and then there's the sort of newer ones that Tesla have got as well. So the price will vary right across the board. We can't sort of sit here and go, right, this particular setup will cost you X amount. Because we don't sell them, we can't tell you that it will cost you a specific price. We can give you a ballpark figure when we do reports and things, but we can never turn around and say that it's definitely going to cost X amount. The figures that we give with the reports that we do are estimates, and it states that on the reports as well. So it's not that we're specifically saying it will cost you X amount. We're advising that it could cost anything up to that, maybe a wee bit more, depending on the system, the style, what the company's going to charge for the labour and things there as well. But certainly, if that's something that you feel would be of use to you, then certainly we can take some details, and either myself, Eva, George, or Stuart, the renewables team, can give you a wee ring and discuss that with you in more detail. And anybody else, if there's anything else that you're wanting to sort of go through in terms of that, we'd be more than happy to do that. And if something's not suitable, then we'll say that, and we'll also explain why and give information to back that up. That's, as Scott said, we're not connected to anybody that sells anything, so it's not going to benefit us speaking to you and saying, yeah, this is great, this is suitable for you, when in actual fact it might not be. It might actually cost you more. So that would be something that we would be more than happy and willing to do if it was something that you felt would be of use.
One of the things with conservation areas is I'm in a conservation area, and originally applied to get solar panels on our south facing roof, and was told I couldn't because it was the conservation area. And then you know, they said, well, try putting them on the north-facing roof, which is a bit pointless, really.
Yeah.
And eventually, with a bit of lateral thinking, we've managed to get them put on the garage, which is, you know, less obvious from the conservation area. Maybe with a bit of thinking around it, and, you know, getting Mike Nisbet, who was here, draw up some nice plans for it, then yeah.
I mentioned the Main Street conservation area tenement.
I've had solar panels for about 7 years now, so if anybody wants any advice, you know, some useful tips I've come across. I know he's also an electrician in the area who can service the systems as well. I've been very happy with them, but there are one or two things to be aware of, I think.
That's a great point, actually. There is this thing called the Green Homes Network. So if you are interested in installing, like the gentleman said there, a specific technology, you can go on and find out from the Green Homes Network advice from those that have already had that specific system installed. On occasion, maybe not now right enough, it used to be that you could go and visit them. They allowed you to visit them in the home, and it's obviously not now, but the Green Homes Network is available through the Energy Savings Trust, and I'll have a look and see if I can get the link for that. You can have a look. The Energy Savings Trust, Home Energy Scotland's website is a great tool. So I've actually put in the chat bar actually the funding finder. You can have a look at that. It'll take you straight through the site. And again, you know, the Green Homes Network, I'll see if I can get a link to that that can explain that a bit better. Might be worth having a look as well if you're interested, like you said there. But it's good that you've got someone like yourself actually offering to let people see, or
yeah, there's little things you need to, you know, make sure the tiles are okay when they put it up. They haven't sort of messed you up that way and things like that. And these companies that set them up, there was a boom a few years ago when there was plenty of allowance payback to use them, but a lot of the companies have gone out of business since they changed the rules on them. But there are people around who can service these things, but don't get caught out with these people who are offering to cleaning the panels every year at a fee, because there's enough rain to do that here. You know, that's not worth it, but you'll be somebody trying it on.
There is one other thing that I would mention about the panels as well, is the inverters within them may need to be replaced within the lifetime of the system.
Yeah.
That itself can cost, it can be a few £100 depending on, again, the company and things that you're using there as well. So that's something to take into account, because you can have the system sitting there and
also
out of nowhere.
Keep a record what electricity you're using before you put them in, so you can compare it after you put them in as well.
Yeah, definitely, because as you say there, it gives you a great visual and a picture as well in terms of what you're using beforehand, and then you can actually see the savings and things that's been made if that's happening. So no, I totally agree with that.
Does anyone else have any other questions at all you'd like to ask away?
There's one more in the chat about somebody saying they'd heard that solar panels can catch fire. Is that a common problem?
Don't get me wrong, I've seen videos and stuff of that happening on YouTube, but I haven't actually spoken to anybody that A, that's happened to, or B, I haven't heard from anybody that knows anybody that's had them in that's happened to. It's not something that I've came across myself personally, so I couldn't really say that happens, but that's not me saying that it can't happen either. Just because I've never heard of it, it doesn't mean that it can't happen like everything else. But I haven't heard of that happening myself personally with anybody that I've spoken to, but like I said, I've seen like videos of it happening on YouTube with that and the freestanding wind turbines as well. So, but I've never actually seen it or heard of an individual that I've spoken with or anything like that at all that it's harmed. So I couldn't say myself.
Katie, your hand up.
Yeah, I just wondered what's the lifespan of solar panels, because I've had mine for a long time. What's the usual lifespan?
Could be roughly anything between 10 to 15 years, depending on how they're looked after and things like that as well. Some might overstep that mark, some might go beforehand, but that's sort of a general sort of lifespan for them. But again, the more modern ones and things, they might go further than that, depending on the manufacturer as well. For drilling down on that for a specific make model, we would always advise to check with the manufacturer. Now I know, just with saying this to customers in the past, I know when I've said that before, a few people have come back and went with their manufacturers, they're going to bump that up, which I can totally understand, and I totally get the sort of thinking behind that. But because of the sort of impartiality side of it, we can't specifically go single panel and technology and things and go through that, but a sort of general rule of thumb is between 10 and 15 years. But again, as I say, they can go further than that if they're well maintained as well. So,
well, the contract that the electricity company gives me to pay me for using them is at least it's a 20-year contract for a start, and then I was told that the efficiency reduces to about 95% efficiency after 20 years.
That's interesting. Can I also say a tip that my son gave me? He's an engineer, and he said when you're changing your carpet, put wool felted underlay underneath your carpet, because that reduces the heat loss downwards.
What kind of underlay, Katie?
It's felted wool.
All right, thank you.
Instead of just putting ordinary underlay under your carpet, put felted wool, and you probably get it if you look it on the web, yes. Google.
Yes.
I can give you the people, Linda.
Okay.
Coming back to
the sorry.
Herdwick sheep.
Yeah, sorry, I was saying you could use very flat sheep.
I've got plenty of that.
There was a question in the chat about any new technologies coming over the horizon. So other than very flat sheep, is there anything else that might be, coming up? Battery storage, I suppose, is something we hear about, and anything else that might be coming over the horizon.
Janet, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to the 2 feet thick stone walls, which I have throughout the house, I was wondering if there was actually a paint that was suitable for the walls that kept out the damp. I mean, I'm aware of the walls being very cold. And in the past, I used some Novo Mura wallpaper 40 years ago, which was like fine polystyrene and had a warm feel to it. Well, I've left that far behind, but I wondered if there was a modern paint that actually was good on solid stone walls as a repellent, a damp repellent, keeping the damp out. Any tips there?
Linda, can I give a word of warning? Walls are essentially they contain moisture.
Yeah.
And the moisture will out.
Right. Yes.
Yes. You cannot help it if you try to put a vapor impermeable paint on, it'll blister. You need to have vapor permeable paint to allow the wall to breathe. And that also applies to any insulation you might want to put on it.
No, I'm not embarking on insulation. No. Thank you.
Do you want to ask your question? Oh, Hamish has got it.
I was going to suggest that, prompted by driving into Lanark quite a few occasions recently, the way that some of the council housing stock has been renovated with external insulation, and I think heat pumps, air source heat pumps. And would it be an idea to consult the, I suppose it's technical services in the council, because they must have experience from several hundred schemes now. Might be interesting.
Yeah, yes. I was once recommended external cladding, but it doesn't do much for the cosmetic appearance of your house.
No.
No, true.
Can I ask a general question as to what?
You're on mute.
Oh, no. Yeah. As to what we're to do after 2025 when we start phasing out gas central heating boilers. Clearly there are various heat pumps available at the moment, and there's talk about having some new generation of gas boilers, and some fanciful chat about pumping hydrogen around the country, which I'm fairly sceptical about. But what is the industry proposing in the next 10 years?
A lot of that was to do with the gas boilers wasn't new build properties initially, wasn't it? So, but renewable technologies are going to play a bigger part as we go on, and you know, that's why it's important to get in touch with us and get one of our renewable specialists, have a chat with them, and they can see which one would be the most suitable for your own property. But like I said as well, you know, these systems work best within a well insulated, energy efficient property, so you can get the maximum benefit from it. So it's having a look at that first before you actually go down that route of installing any renewables, I would have said. Yeah.
Well, there is going to be, in something like 10 years' time, a lot of fairly modern houses with good insulation, but with wet heating systems, and marrying that up to the new generation of renewable heat sources is going to be quite difficult.
And it's going to be interesting for something like where I am, which is not allowed solar, ground source is impossible. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, obviously there are issues that they've got to look at, and I'm sure that a solution, you know, these solutions will materialise, but Paul and I only we only speak to groups, and for us to get involved in policy and things like that is.
I mean, is there anything, just following up on Laura's questions, with tenements, with you know, obviously we got multiple ownership. How do you deal with that? Because even if the roof wasn't in a conservation area, you've got 4 or 6 people on a stair, and they.
I'm advised that the top floor has to take ownership of the roof, and that means all repairs. That's a big no.
I mean, are there any examples of tenements where renewables have been fitted to them?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, there's been plenty of inquiries in regards to people wanting to do it, like the solar panel instance. And then obviously with the issues of the ownership of the roof and things, that hasn't transpired. They've not wanted to take it any further. I haven't again came across anybody that's actually went and done that within a tenement setup. So again, that's something that I can double check with one of our colleagues at the office, who's a lot clued up in terms of the tenements and the renewable side of things.
Okay, I think that's any more questions, or I think we've had a really good round of questions and some really good answers. So big thank you to Paul and Scott for coming along this evening, and to everybody else for coming along their questions.